The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, people had looked up at the night sky and wondered what lay beyond. They dreamed of distant worlds, of strange civilizations, of adventures among the cosmos. When humanity finally built ships that could travel between stars, they thought their dreams had come true. They were wrong. The galaxy was not empty. It was full of life. Hundreds of intelligent species lived among the stars. They had built great empires that stretched across thousands of light years. They had technologies that seemed like magic to human eyes. And at the center of it all was the Galactic Concord. The Concord was an alliance of 12 elder species. These were civilizations that had existed for millions of years. They had mastered science that humans could barely understand. They controlled the largest fleets, the richest planets, and the most important trade routes. Their word was law in the galaxy. When human ships first made contact with alien life, there was celebration on Earth. People danced in the streets. World leaders made speeches about a new era of cooperation. Scientists talked about the knowledge they would gain. Everyone believed that humanity would soon take its place among the stars, but the elder species did not share this excitement. To them, humans were nothing special. They were just another young species stumbling into space for the first time. The galaxy had seen thousands of such civilizations rise and fall. Most of them never lasted more than a few thousand years. The elder species had learned not to waste their time on such short-lived creatures. The first human diplomats arrived at the Concord's Great Hall with hope in their hearts. They came with gifts and proposals for friendship. They spoke of peace and mutual benefit. They asked for nothing more than a chance to prove themselves worthy of membership in the galactic community. The elder species listened politely. Then they said no. "Your civilization is too young," the Vorath ambassador explained. His species looked like tall insects with shining black shells. "You must prove yourselves stable for at least 10,000 years before we consider membership. But we wish only to trade," the human diplomat pleaded. "Surely commerce benefits everyone. Your technology is too primitive," the Kasari representative replied. Her species resembled floating jellyfish made of pure light. "You have nothing we want. Come back when you have something to offer." The humans returned home disappointed but not defeated. They decided to build their colonies anyway. They spread out from Earth slowly, settling on a dozen worlds within 100 light years of their home star. They called this region the Soul Reach. For 50 years, humanity grew quietly in its small corner of the galaxy. They built cities and farms. They raised families. They developed new technologies. They were not as advanced as the elder species, but they were improving year by year. Then the Vextari came. The Vextari Dominion was not a member of the Galactic Concord. They were a warrior species that lived on the edges of civilized space. Their empire was built on conquest and slavery. They raided weaker species, took their populations, and sold them across the galaxy. The Concord tolerated the Vextari because they were useful. They did the dirty work that the elder species preferred not to do. They provided cheap labor for dangerous jobs. They kept troublesome regions under control. As long as the Vextari did not attack Concord members, no one cared what they did to others. The first Vextari raid on human space happened on a small colony called New Dawn. It was a farming world with only 200,000 people. They had no military. They had no defenses. They never expected anyone to attack them. The Vextari ships appeared without warning. They descended on the colony like locusts. Their soldiers, massive reptilian creatures with 4 arms and scales like armor, swept through the streets. They killed anyone who resisted. They rounded up everyone else. When the raid was over, New Dawn was empty. Every man, woman, and child had been taken. The Vextari loaded them onto slave ships and disappeared into deep space. Earth received the distress signal 3 days later. By then, it was far too late. The human government sent an urgent message to the Galactic Concord. They begged for help. They asked for protection. They pleaded for the elder species to intervene. The Concord's response came 1 week later. It was only 2 sentences long. "Humanity is not a member of the Galactic Concord. Your affairs are not our concern." The message hit Earth like a physical blow. People had believed that the galaxy would help them in their time of need. They had believed that the elder species, with all their wisdom, would not allow such evil to go unpunished. They had believed in justice. They stopped believing. The Vextari returned the following year. This time they attacked 3 colonies at once. They took 500,000 people. Once again, Humanity asked the conquered for help. Once again, the answer was no. The pattern continued for 30 years. Every year, the Vexthari would raid human space. Sometimes they attacked small outposts. Sometimes they struck major colonies. They grew bolder with each attack. Knowing that no one would stop them, humanity fought back as best they could. They built warships. They trained soldiers. They developed better weapons. But the Vexthari were stronger. Their ships were faster. Their technology was centuries ahead of anything humans could build. For every Vexthari raider that human forces destroyed, 10 more would come. For every colony they defended, 2 others would fall. The war was hopeless, and everyone knew it. During those dark years, humanity lost 12 million people to slavery. 12 million fathers and mothers, sons and daughters, taken from their homes and sold like animals. Some were sent to mining operations on lifeless rocks. Others were sold to factories that worked them to death. Many simply disappeared, their fates unknown. Each time, Earth sent messages to the Concord. Each time, the answer was the same cold silence. The elder species knew what was happening. They watched humanity suffer. They had the power to stop it with a single word. The Vexthari would never dare to defy the Concord directly. One warning would have been enough, but that warning never came. Some elder species even profited from human suffering. Kessari merchants bought human slaves for their entertainment houses. Vorath scientists purchased human subjects for their experiments. The galaxy watched humanity bleed, and it counted its profits. In the halls of Earth's government, anger slowly replaced despair. Leaders who had once counseled patience now spoke of revenge. Military officers who had fought defensive campaigns now drew up offensive plans. Scientists who had worked on peaceful technologies now turned their minds to weapons. A secret meeting was held in a bunker deep beneath the mountains of Switzerland. The most important people on Earth gathered there: presidents and generals, scientists and engineers, the best minds humanity had to offer. They came together to make a decision that would change everything. "We cannot win this war," Admiral Chenway said flatly. He was an old man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 20 years fighting the Vexthari. He had watched friends die. He had seen colonies burn. He knew the truth better than anyone. "Our current path leads only to extinction." "Then what do you suggest?" President Okonkwo asked. She was the leader of the United Earth Council. The weight of humanity's survival rested on her shoulders. "Do we surrender? Let them take us all?" "No," Admiral Chen replied. "We change the game entirely. We build something so powerful that the Vexthari will never dare attack us again. Something so terrible that the entire galaxy will think twice before threatening humanity." He placed a data chip on the table. The holographic projector activated, showing blueprints that made everyone in the room gasp. "We call it the Prometheus Project." The ship in the blueprints was unlike anything humanity had ever built. It was 3 kilometers long, bristling with weapons. Its design incorporated technology that was considered impossible by every known scientific principle. "This cannot be built," one scientist said immediately. "The power requirements alone are beyond anything we can achieve. And this drive system you've designed, it would require harnessing a black hole. That's suicide." "The Concord says the same thing," Admiral Chen agreed. "They believe such technology is too dangerous to attempt. They stopped trying to develop it millions of years ago. Then why should we succeed where they failed?" Admiral Chen smiled grimly. "Because they have something to lose. We do not." The scientist fell silent. He understood what the Admiral meant. The elder species were careful. They were cautious. They had vast empires and countless lives to protect. They would never risk everything on a desperate gamble. But humanity was already losing everything. They had nothing left to protect except their future. And they were willing to bet that future on one impossible ship. The Prometheus project began in secret. The construction site was hidden in the shipyards of Titan, Saturn's largest moon. The moon's thick atmosphere and extreme cold helped hide the project from alien sensors. Only a few thousand people knew it existed. Materials arrived from across human space. Rare metals from asteroid mines. Exotic elements from gas giant atmospheres. Components that took years to manufacture. Everything was smuggled to Titan in small shipments, hidden among regular cargo. The best engineers worked on the ship's structure. The best physicists worked on its power systems. The best weapons designers worked on its armaments. They worked in rotating shifts, never stopping. knowing that every day lost was another day the Vextari could attack. The most challenging part was the drive system. To achieve the speeds they needed, they had to create something called a reality fold engine. This technology would bend space itself, allowing the ship to travel faster than light without actually moving. The theory was simple. The execution was nearly impossible. The key was a controlled singularity, a tiny black hole, no larger than an atom, that could generate the gravity needed to fold space. Creating such a singularity was dangerous beyond measure. One mistake would destroy not just the ship but the entire moon. 3 times the project nearly ended in disaster. 3 times the scientists managed to pull back from the edge of catastrophe. Many people died during those years. Their names were recorded in a secret memorial that only the project members would ever see. But they did not stop. They could not stop. Every night, the workers would look up at the stars and remember why they were there. They remembered New Dawn. They remembered every colony that had burned. They remembered the 12 million people whose only crime was being human in a galaxy that did not care. Their anger kept them going when exhaustion threatened to break them. After 8 years of work, the Singularity Drive was finally completed. It was housed in the center of the ship, surrounded by magnetic containment fields stronger than any ever built. The scientists called it the Heart. It beat with the power of a dying star. The weapons came next. Human engineers studied every piece of Vextari technology they could find. They took apart crashed raiders. They analyzed captured weapons. They reverse-engineered everything. Then they made improvements. The Vextari used plasma weapons that could burn through steel. Human weapons designers created plasma lances that could burn through anything. They discovered that by accelerating plasma in a magnetic spiral, they could increase its power 100-fold. The Vextari used missiles that tracked their targets through space. Human designers created graviton missiles that could collapse matter into itself. A single graviton warhead could crush a warship into a ball no larger than a marble. But the most terrifying weapon was the main cannon. Some scientists called it the Sunfire. Others called it the Wrath of Sol. It worked by capturing a small portion of plasma from a star, compressing it to impossible density, and firing it in a focused beam. Nothing could withstand such a weapon. No shield, no armor, no technology in the galaxy could stop concentrated starfire. When the Times Prometheus Times was finally complete, it was more than just a ship. It was humanity's answer to a universe that had abandoned them. It was every tear and every scream of the past 30 years, forged into metal and fury. Admiral Chen Wei had died 2 years before completion. His successor was Admiral Yuki Tanaka. She was younger, harder, and utterly without mercy for those who had harmed humanity. When she first walked onto the bridge of the Times Prometheus asterisk, she stood in silence for a long moment. "How many people worked on this ship?" she asked. "Over the years?" "About 8,000 directly," her executive officer replied. "Another 100,000 if you count everyone who contributed materials and components." "And how many died?" 412, including Admiral Chen. Tanaka nodded slowly. She walked to the command chair and sat down. The leather was cold. The displays glowed with soft blue light. Through the view screen, she could see the stars waiting. "Begin final systems check," she ordered, "and send a message to Earth. Tell them the Times Prometheus Times is ready." On Earth, President Okonkwo received the message in her private office. She was older now, her hair white, her face lined with decades of worry. She had carried the burden of the Prometheus project since its beginning. She had authorized the risks. She had signed the orders that sent people to their deaths. Now the time had come to decide if it was all worth it. 3 days before the message arrived, the Vextari had attacked again. Their target was New Helsinki, the largest human colony outside the Sol system. 14 million people lived there. The Vextari had brought their largest fleet ever, over 50 ships. New Helsinki had fallen in 6 hours. The Vextari had taken 2 million people. The rest were dead. President Okonkwo looked at the casualty reports. 14 million names. 14 million lives ended or destroyed. She had known this attack was coming. Intelligence had warned her weeks ago. She had chosen not to reinforce the colony. She had let them die. Some would call her a monster. Some would say she sacrificed her own people. But Okonkwo knew the truth. If she had sent Earth's fleet to defend New Helsinki, the Vextari would have destroyed them. Then Earth itself would be defenseless. The entire species would fall. Instead, she had waited. She had let the attack happen. She had given the Vextori their victory, knowing it would be their last. Now it was time for humanity's answer. She typed 2 words and sent them to Titan. No more. On the bridge of the Times Prometheus *, Admiral Tanaka received the message. She read it twice. Then she stood and addressed her crew. For 30 years, we have been victims, she said. Her voice was calm but carried to every corner of the ship. For 30 years, we have begged for help that never came. For 30 years, we have buried our dead and mourned our lost. She paused, letting the weight of those years settle on everyone. Today that ends. Today we stop being prey. Today we show the galaxy what happens when humanity is pushed too far. The crew responded with silence. They did not cheer. This was not a moment for celebration. This was a moment for something darker, something colder. This was the moment humanity stopped asking for justice and decided to take it. Navigation, Tanaka ordered. Set course for the Vextori home system. Maximum speed. Course laid in, Admiral. Weapons. Begin charging all primary systems. I want us ready for combat the moment we arrive. Understood, Admiral. Tanaka took her seat. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. The ship hummed with power as the singularity drive spun up to full capacity. Reality itself began to bend around the Times Prometheus *. Engage, Tanaka said. The stars stretched into lines, space folded like paper, and humanity's fury flew toward its target at speeds the galaxy had never seen. The Vextori had no idea what was coming. They were celebrating their victory at New Helsinki. They were counting their new slaves. They were laughing at the weakness of the human species. They would not be laughing for much longer. The Times Prometheus Times tore through the fabric of space, carrying with it the hopes and rage of an entire civilization. In its wake, it left nothing but silence and the memory of a species that had finally learned the most important lesson the galaxy had to offer. No one would save humanity. Humanity would have to save itself, and heaven help anyone who stood in their way. Admiral Yuki Tanaka had known war her entire life. She was born on a transport ship fleeing from the first Vextori raid. Her mother had died giving birth to her while alarms screamed and plasma fire burned the sky outside. Her father had raised her alone on a refugee station, telling her stories of the home they had lost. When she was old enough, she joined the military. There was never any question about it. The Vextori had taken everything from her before she could even walk. She had grown up hating them with a purity that frightened even her. She rose through the ranks quickly. She was smart. She was ruthless. She understood war in ways that made older officers uncomfortable. While they planned defensive campaigns, she drew up attack strategies. While they talked about protecting what they had, she spoke of making the enemy bleed. Her superiors noticed. They watched her carefully. Some thought she was too aggressive, too dangerous to promote further. Others saw exactly what humanity needed. Admiral Chen Wei had been one of those others. He had recruited her for the Prometheus project 5 years before his death. He had seen in her the same cold fire that burned in himself. He knew that when the time came, she would not hesitate. The galaxy will call us monsters, he had told her once. They will say, we went too far. They will lecture us about proportion and restraint and civilized behavior. Let them, Tanaka had replied. They had 30 years to show us civilized behavior. They chose to watch us die instead. Now Chen was dead, and Tanaka sat in the command chair he had designed. The Times Prometheus Times raced through folded space, crossing distances that should have taken years in mere hours. The ship's hull groaned and creaked as reality twisted around it. Status report, Tanaka ordered. All systems operating within normal parameters. Commander James Morrison replied. He was her executive officer, a tall man with dark skin and careful eyes. He had lost his entire family in the New Helsinki attack 3 days ago. His wife, his 2 daughters, gone. He had not cried. He had not raged. He had simply reported for duty and asked to be part of the mission. Tanaka understood. Some pain was too large for tears. Time to arrival? She asked. 17 hours at current speed. 17 hours. After 30 years of suffering, humanity's answer would arrive in 17 hours. Tanaka stood from her chair. I'll be in my quarters. Wake me in 16 hours. She walked through the corridors of the Times Prometheus *, passing crew members who nodded silently as she went by. Everyone knew why they were here. Everyone knew what was coming. There was no need for speeches or motivation. They all carried the same weight in their hearts. Her quarters were small but comfortable. A bed, a desk, a single window looking out at the swirling chaos of folded space. She sat at the desk and pulled up a file she had looked at thousands of times. It was a list of names. Every human being who had died or been taken by the HFY Story in 30 years. 12 million names. She had memorized as many as she could. She whispered them to herself sometimes. A prayer to the dead. Maria Chen. Thomas Wright. Sarah Okonjo. David Kim. The names went on and on. Children and elderly. Soldiers and civilians. Heroes who had died fighting, and innocents who had simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time. "I'm coming," Tanaka whispered. "I'm coming to answer for all of you." She closed the file and tried to sleep. It did not come easily. It never did anymore. Far ahead, unaware of the death racing toward them, the Vextari Dominion celebrated. Vextar Prime was a massive world, nearly twice the size of Earth. Its surface was covered in vast cities built from black stone and red metal. 12 billion Vextari lived there, the heart of an empire that stretched across 200 star systems. The Vextari were an ancient species, older than humanity by millions of years. They had once been prey themselves, hunted by larger predators on their harsh homeworld. Evolution had made them survivors. They had grown strong and fast and cruel. Their society was built on a simple principle. The strong ruled and the weak served. They had applied this principle to every species they encountered. Those who were stronger than them, they avoided. Those who were weaker, they enslaved. Humanity had been among the weakest species they had ever found. Soft bodies, slow reflexes, primitive technology. The Vextari had raided human space like children picking fruit from a tree. There was no sport in it, no challenge, just easy prey. High Commander Vex Wrath looked out from his palace at the celebration below. He was the supreme ruler of the Dominion, a massive creature standing 3 meters tall with scales the color of dried blood. His forearms were thick with muscle. His eyes glowed with cruel intelligence. The streets below were filled with Vextari celebrating the victory at New Helsinki. Holo displays showed images of burning human cities. Speakers broadcast the screams of human captives. It was a festival of triumph. "The humans will break soon," General Kextal said. He stood beside the High Commander, smaller but no less dangerous. "One more attack on their home system, and they will surrender completely." "Perhaps," Vex Wrath replied. His voice was deep and rumbling. "But there is no rush. Let them suffer. Let them understand their place in the universe." "The Galactic Concord has sent another message," Kextal continued. "They remind us not to destabilize the region too quickly. They want a steady supply of labor, not a sudden flood." Vex Wrath made a sound of contempt. "The Concord, those ancient cowards hiding behind their treaties and protocols. They pretend to be above our business while they profit from every slave we sell. They are still powerful. We cannot afford to anger them. We will not. The humans are not protected by their precious laws. We can do whatever we want to them." Below, the celebration continued. Music played. Fireworks exploded in the dark sky. Children waved flags, showing the Dominion symbol. A clawed fist crushing a broken chain. None of them knew that their doom was already on its way. 16 hours later, Admiral Tanaka returned to the bridge. She had managed a few hours of sleep, enough to clear her mind. She would need every bit of clarity for what was coming. "Status?" she asked, taking her seat. "We're approaching the Vextari home system," Commander Morrison reported. "We'll drop out of fold space in approximately 45 minutes. Tactical assessment." Lieutenant Chen, the tactical officer and no relation to the late admiral, pulled up a holographic display. "Based on our intelligence, the Vextari home fleet numbers approximately 400 warships. Most are older designs, but they have at least 50 capital ships capable of serious firepower." "Can they hurt us?" Tanaka asked. "Unknown, Admiral. The Times Prometheus Times has never been tested in actual combat. Simulations suggest our shields can withstand anything they throw at us, but simulations are not reality." Tanaka nodded slowly. "And the planetary defenses?" "Extensive. Ground-based missile platforms, orbital weapon stations, and a network of shield generators protecting major cities. They've had millions of years to build their defenses. It won't matter," Tanaka said quietly. "Nothing they have will matter." The bridge crew exchanged glances. They had all seen the specifications of their weapons. They knew, in theory, what the Prometheus times could do. But theory and practice were very different things. 30 minutes to arrival, Morrison announced. Sound general quarters, all hands to battle stations. Alarms rang throughout the ship. Crew members who had been resting jumped from their beds and ran to their posts. Weapons officers began warming up targeting systems. Shield technicians checked power levels. Medical staff prepared for casualties that might never come. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Patel watched the Singularity drive with anxious eyes. The tiny black hole at the heart of their ship pulsed with barely contained energy. It had worked perfectly so far, but they were about to push it harder than ever before. "You holding together, old friend?" Patel whispered to the drive. She had worked on it for 7 years. She knew its moods better than she knew her own children. The drive hummed in response, its magnetic containment fields holding steady. 20 minutes to arrival. Morrison's voice came over the intercom. On the bridge, Tanaka reviewed the attack plan one final time. They would emerge from fold space directly above Vextar Prime, within weapons range of both the planet and the home fleet. It was an aggressive position, designed to show the Vextari that humanity was not afraid. Some might call it suicidal. Tanaka called it a statement. 15 minutes. She opened a channel to the entire ship. Her voice carried to every corner of the Prometheus asterisk, reaching every one of the 2,000 crew members aboard. "This is Admiral Tanaka. In a few minutes, we will arrive at the heart of the Vextari Dominion. We will be outnumbered by hundreds of ships. We will face weapons that have destroyed civilizations. We will be entering the most dangerous place any human has ever been." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I will not tell you that we will all survive. I will not make promises I cannot keep. What I will tell you is this. Today, we stop being victims. Today, we answer 30 years of slavery and murder. Today, we show the galaxy that humanity is not prey." Her voice hardened. "The Vextari thought they could take our people with no consequences. The Galactic Concord thought they could ignore our suffering and face no judgment. They were all wrong. Today, they learn what happens when humanity has nothing left to lose. 10 minutes. I am proud to serve with every one of you. Whatever happens in the next few hours, know that you are heroes. Know that your names will be remembered forever. Know that you are doing something that matters. 5 minutes. For Earth. For the colonies. For everyone we've lost. Let's show them what we're made of." She closed the channel. Around her, the bridge crew sat in silence. Some were afraid. Some were eager. All of them were ready. 2 minutes. The stars outside the view screen began to slow. The strange lights of fold space started to fade. Reality reasserted itself as the Prometheus times prepared to enter normal space. 1 minute. Tanaka gripped the arms of her chair. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady. She had waited her entire life for this moment. 30 seconds. Weapons ready. Lieutenant Chen reported. "Shields at maximum." Another officer added. "Emergence in 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7. The stars snapped back into focus. The blackness of normal space replaced the swirling chaos of the fold. And there, directly ahead, was Vextar Prime. It was a massive planet, brown and red, covered in the lights of billions of Vextari. Orbital stations surrounded it like a crown of metal, and between the planet and the Prometheus asterisk, a fleet of warships scrambled to respond to the unexpected arrival. "Contact," Lieutenant Chen announced. 247 Vextari vessels in immediate range, more launching from orbital docks. "They're hailing us," the communications officer reported. On screen, the face of a Vextari appeared on the main display. He was a military officer, his scales decorated with medals and scars. His eyes narrowed as he saw the human ship. "Unknown vessel. You have entered Dominion space without authorization. Identify yourself immediately or be destroyed." Tanaka stood from her chair. She walked forward until she was directly in front of the screen, her eyes locked on the alien commander. "I am Admiral Yuki Tanaka, of the Earth Warship Prometheus asterisk. I am here to deliver a message." The Vextari commander's lips curled into a sneer. "A human warship? One ship? You dare come here with one ship? Yes, you are either very brave or very stupid. Perhaps both." The commander laughed, a harsh barking sound. "Surrender now, and I will make your deaths quick. Resist, and your crew will be sold to the mines. The women will go to the pleasure houses. The men will work until they die. Tanaka's expression did not change. You have committed crimes against humanity for 30 years. You have killed millions of our people. You have enslaved millions more. You have burned our colonies and laughed at our suffering. And we will continue to do so. The commander replied. You are prey. That is all you have ever been. That is all you will ever be. No, Tanaka said. Her voice was quiet but carried absolute conviction. We were prey. We are not anymore. She turned to her tactical officer. Open all weapon ports. Along the hull of the Times Prometheus asterisk, panels slid open to reveal arrays of weapons that made the Vexthari sensors scream with warnings. Plasma lances the size of buildings, graviton launchers that glowed with dark energy, and at the front of the ship, the main cannon, pointing directly at the Vexthari fleet. The commander's sneer faded. He leaned forward, studying his displays. Whatever he saw there made his scales pale. What is that ship? He demanded. Where did you get that technology? We built it, Tanaka replied. We built it while you were raiding our colonies. We built it while the galaxy watched us suffer. We built it with our blood, and our tears, and our hate. She stepped closer to the screen. For 30 years we asked for help. We begged the Concord to protect us. We pleaded with the galaxy to show us mercy. No one listened. No one cared. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. So we stopped asking. We stopped begging. We stopped pleading. And we started building. The Vexthari commander was no longer laughing. He was no longer sneering. He was staring at the human woman with something he had never felt toward a human before. Fear. You cannot fight our entire fleet, he said. But his voice lacked conviction. You are one ship against hundreds. Yes, Tanaka agreed. One ship. Built by a species that had nothing left to lose. Crewed by people who would rather die than submit. Armed with weapons that your scientists said were impossible. She smiled, and there was no warmth in it. I suggest you tell your High Commander that humanity has come to call. Tell him that the age of easy prey is over. Tell him that every human life he took will be repaid 1,000 times. You're insane, the commander breathed. Perhaps that's what it takes. Perhaps that's what you made us when you took our children and sold them like cattle. Tanaka turned back to her chair. As she sat down, she issued her final words to the Vexthari. You took our people. You burned our worlds. You believed we were prey. She looked directly into the camera, her eyes burning with 30 years of rage. You were wrong. She cut the communication with a gesture. The Vexthari commander's face disappeared from the screen, replaced by the view of the enemy fleet. They were forming up now, over 300 ships arranged in attack formation. Their weapons were charging. Their shields were raised. They thought they were ready. They had no idea what was coming. All hands, Tanaka announced. Prepare for combat. Weapons free. Target the lead vessels first. Show them what the Times Prometheus Times can do. Targeting confirmed, Lieutenant Chen replied. Plasma lances charged. Graviton missiles armed. Main cannon standing by. The enemy fleet is advancing, Morrison reported. They're launching fighters. Missile platforms are locking onto us. Tanaka watched the approaching fleet with cold eyes. So many ships, so much firepower. Any other human vessel would have been destroyed in seconds. But the Times Prometheus Times was not any other vessel. Fire, she ordered, and the stars themselves seemed to scream as humanity's fury was finally unleashed. The first shot from the Times Prometheus Times crossed the void in less than a second. It was a plasma lance. A beam of superheated matter accelerated to near light speed. The Vexthari flagship had shields that could withstand nuclear explosions. Those shields lasted exactly 0.3 seconds before they collapsed. The lance continued through the ship like a hot knife through butter. It entered at the bow and exited at the stern, leaving a tunnel of molten metal and burning atmosphere. Secondary explosions ripped through the vessel as fuel lines and ammunition stores ignited. The Vexthari flagship, pride of the Dominion fleet, died before its commander could even give an order. For a moment, the entire Vexthari fleet hesitated. They had expected a battle. They had expected the human ship to fight and struggle and eventually fall. They had not expected their flagship to be destroyed in a single shot. That moment of hesitation cost them dearly. The Times Prometheus Times fired again, and again, and again. Plasma lances reached out from the human ship in all directions. Each beam found a target. Each target died. Cruisers and destroyers, battleships and carriers, they all fell with equal ease. The weapons that had seemed invincible against human technology were nothing against the fury of the time's Prometheus asterisk. 12 ships destroyed, Lieutenant Chen reported. His voice was steady, professional, as if he were reading a weather report. Enemy fleet is beginning evasive maneuvers. Don't let them scatter, Tanaka ordered. Launch graviton missiles at the flanking groups. Force them to stay together. Missiles away. The graviton missiles were smaller than the plasma lances, but no less deadly. They flew toward the Vexthari fleet in elegant arcs, their targeting computers adjusting their paths constantly. When they reached their targets, they did not explode in the traditional sense. Instead, they collapsed. Each missile created a microscopic gravity well, a point of attraction so powerful that it crushed everything around it. Ships that had been trying to escape suddenly found themselves being pulled toward an invisible center. Metal screamed and tore. Hulls crumpled like paper. In seconds, a dozen ships were reduced to compressed spheres no larger than a car. The Vexthari commander, whoever had taken over after the flagship's destruction, finally managed to coordinate a response. Hundreds of weapons fired at once. Missiles and plasma bolts and kinetic projectiles all streaked toward the time's Prometheus asterisk. Incoming fire, Morrison reported. Impact in 15 seconds. Shields? Tanaka asked calmly, holding steady at 98%. The barrage struck the time's Prometheus times like a storm hitting a mountain. Fire bloomed across the ship's shields. The hull shook with impacts. Alarms blared briefly before being silenced. When the attack ended, the time's Prometheus times hung unchanged in space. Not a single shot had penetrated its defenses. Damage report, Tanaka ordered. Shield generators operating normally. Minor power fluctuations in Sector 7, already compensated. No casualties. The bridge crew exchanged looks of disbelief. They had just absorbed a bombardment that would have destroyed any human fleet. They had barely felt it. The Vexthari are launching another wave, Chen reported. They're committing everything. 412 ships now in range. Good, Tanaka said. I want them all here. I want them to see what happens. She stood from her chair and walked to the view screen. The Vexthari fleet filled the display, a swarm of warships that would have made any normal commander retreat in terror. Prepare the main cannon, she ordered. The bridge fell silent. The main cannon had never been fired before. It existed only in theory and simulations. No one knew for certain what would happen when it activated. Main cannon charging, Chen confirmed. His voice wavered slightly. Power levels rising. Stellar containment holding. 60%. 70. 80. On the exterior of the ship, the massive barrel at the bow began to glow. First red, then orange, then white. The light grew brighter and brighter, until it hurt to look at even through the view screen's filters. 90%. 95. Full charge achieved. Sunfire cannon ready to fire. Tanaka looked at the Vexthari fleet. They were still coming. They were still fighting. They still believed they could win. Target the center of their formation, she said. Maximum dispersal. Target locked. Fire. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then a beam of pure white light erupted from the time's Prometheus asterisk. It was not a laser or plasma or any technology the galaxy had ever seen. It was sunfire, a piece of a star, compressed and focused into a weapon. The beam crossed the distance to the Vexthari fleet in an instant. When it struck, it expanded. Ships at the center of the formation simply ceased to exist. They did not explode. They did not burn. They were there one moment and gone the next, converted to plasma by temperatures that matched a stellar core. The ships nearby fared little better. The expanding wave of stellar energy hit them like a hurricane of fire. Their shields failed instantly. Their hulls melted and evaporated. Their crews never knew what killed them. The beam lasted only 3 seconds. When it ended, a hole existed in the Vexthari fleet, a gap where over 100 ships had once been. Nothing remained except expanding clouds of superheated gas. 107 ships destroyed, Chen reported. His voice was barely a whisper now. Confirmed kills. The surviving Vexthari ships stopped their advance. They hung in space, their crews too shocked to respond. They had just witnessed the impossible. Over 100 of their warships, destroyed in a single shot. They're retreating, Morrison said. The remaining ships are falling back toward the planet. No, Tanaka replied. They don't get to retreat. Not after everything they've done. Admiral? Full pursuit. Destroy any ship that tries to escape. None of them leave this system. The Times Prometheus time surged forward, its reality full drive carrying it faster than any ship had a right to move. The Vextari fled in panic now. All formation abandoned. They ran for the orbital stations, for the planetary defense network, for anything that might protect them. Nothing did. The plasma lances reached out again and again. Ships died by the dozens. The graviton missiles claimed more. The retreating fleet became a retreating massacre. Then simply, a massacre. Some ships tried to surrender. They broadcast on all frequencies, begging for mercy, offering anything in exchange for their lives. Tanaka listened to their pleas without expression. Did they accept surrender when our colonies begged for mercy? She asked quietly. No one answered. They all knew the answer. Continue firing. The last Vextari warship died 11 minutes after the battle began. It was a small corvette, barely armed, trying to flee toward the system's edge. A single plasma lance caught it as it ran. It vanished in a flash of light. All enemy vessels destroyed, Chen reported. 431 confirmed kills. 0 ships escaped. The bridge was silent. The crew stared at their displays, trying to comprehend what had just happened. In less than 15 minutes, they had destroyed an entire fleet, a fleet that should have been enough to conquer any human world. A fleet that had terrorized humanity for 3 decades. Gone. All of it. Gone. Begin orbital approach, Tanaka ordered. Target the military installations first, then the government centers, then the slave processing facilities. Morrison turned to look at her. Admiral, are we really going to bombard the planet? Yes. There are 12 billion people down there. Civilians, non-combatants. I know, Admiral, Commander Morrison. Tanaka's voice was cold. How many human civilians did the Vextari kill? How many non-combatants did they enslave? How many children did they sell to mines and pleasure houses? Morrison fell silent. 12 million, Tanaka continued. 12 million of our people, and the Vextari called it sport. They celebrated their raids. They gave medals to the commanders who killed the most humans. They made entertainment programs about our suffering. She turned back to the view screen. Vextar Prime filled the display now, a massive sphere of brown and red. From here, she could see the lights of cities covering the night side, billions of lives, going about their business, unaware of what was coming. I will not destroy their civilization, Tanaka said. I will not kill every Vextari. But I will make them understand. I will make them remember. I will carve a lesson into their world that will last for 1,000 generations. She sat back down in her chair. Target military installations. Fire. The plasma lances reached down from orbit. They struck like the fingers of an angry god. Military bases that had stood for centuries vanished in columns of fire. Weapons factories that had produced the ships and guns used to raid human space burned and melted. The Vextari Planetary Defense Network tried to respond. Ground-based missiles launched toward the Times Prometheus asterisk. Orbital stations opened fire with everything they had. Shield generators activated, trying to protect the cities below. None of it mattered. The missiles were intercepted by point defense systems that could track 1,000 targets simultaneously. The orbital stations lasted seconds against the plasma lances. The shield generators overloaded and failed when hit by weapons they were never designed to stop. Planetary military capacity reduced by 70%, Chen reported. Government district is unshielded. Target the government centers. The next volley struck the capital city of Vextar Prime, the palace of High Commander Vexwrath, where he had watched the celebration of New Helsinki's fall just days before, collapsed into rubble. The chambers of the Dominion Council, where decisions to raid human space had been made, were vaporized. Vexwrath himself died in the third strike. He had been trying to reach his personal shuttle when a plasma lance hit the landing pad. The greatest ruler in Vextari history was reduced to ash in an instant. Government infrastructure eliminated, Chen said. Moving to secondary targets. Target the slave processing facilities. These were the buildings that haunted human nightmares. The centers where captured humans had been sorted, cataloged, and distributed across the galaxy. The auction houses where families had been torn apart, the breeding facilities where human women had been forced to produce more slaves, they burned. All of them. Every facility, every record, every chain, and cage, and auction block. The infrastructure of human slavery on Vexthar Prime was erased from existence. All priority targets destroyed. Chen reported at last. The Prometheus Times hung in orbit above a wounded world. Smoke rose from dozens of locations across the planet's surface. Fires burned where cities had stood. The night side, which had been bright with the lights of civilization, now had dark patches where those lights would never shine again. But Tanaka had kept her word. She had not destroyed the Vexthari civilization. The cities where civilians lived were intact. The agricultural regions that fed the population were untouched. The infrastructure that kept billions of people alive still functioned. She had hurt them. She had crippled their military. She had killed their leaders. She had destroyed their capacity to make war, but she had not committed genocide. That line, at least, she would not cross. Casualties? She asked quietly. Chen hesitated before answering. Based on population density analysis of targeted areas, approximately 800 million dead, plus or minus 20%. 800 million, a number so large it lost all meaning. More deaths than every human lost in every war since the beginning of history. Tanaka closed her eyes. She had known this moment would come. She had prepared herself for it. But the weight of it still pressed down on her like a physical thing. 800 million lives. She had ordered their deaths. She had watched them die. She would carry that number with her for the rest of her life. But then she thought of the other number. 12 million. 12 million humans taken as slaves. 12 million people who had suffered and died in alien mines and factories and worse. 12 million names she had memorized in her quarters, night after night. It's not enough, she whispered. It will never be enough to truly balance the scales. But it's a start. She opened her eyes and stood. Open a channel. All frequencies. I want every receiver in this system, in this sector, in this entire galaxy to hear this. Channel open, Admiral. Tanaka faced the pickup. Her image would be broadcast across the stars, reaching civilizations that had never seen a human before. Her words would be recorded and remembered for centuries. This is Admiral Yuki Tanaka of the Earth Warship Prometheus *. I am speaking from orbit above, Vexthar Prime, capital world of the Vexthari Dominion. She paused, letting that sink in. For 30 years, the Vexthari raided human space. They killed our people. They enslaved our children. They burned our colonies. The Galactic Concord watched and did nothing. The elder species counted their profits from our blood. Her voice grew harder. Today, humanity has answered. The Vexthari fleet is destroyed. Their military capacity is crippled. Their leaders are dead. Their empire will never threaten us again. She stepped closer to the pickup. This message is for every species in the galaxy. Every civilization that watched our suffering. Every power that could have helped us but chose not to. Humanity remembers. We remember every colony that burned while you looked away. We remember every child taken while you counted your coins. We remember every plea for help that was met with silence. We do not ask for your help anymore. We do not need it. We have learned to save ourselves. But know this. If any species threatens humanity again, if any power tries to make prey of our people, they will face the same fate as the Vexthari. We have built weapons that your scientists said were impossible. We have ships that your engineers said could not exist. And we have rage that has been building for 30 years. Humanity is no longer prey. We are no longer the weak species you can ignore. We are something new, something you have never seen before. And we will never, ever forget what you allowed to happen to us. She let those words hang in silence for a long moment. To the people of Vexthar Prime, your military is gone. Your leaders are dead. Your empire of slavery is over. How you rebuild is up to you. Choose to become something better, or face the consequences if you return to your old ways. To the Galactic Concord, we have no quarrel with you. We do not seek war, but we will not accept being ignored anymore. Humanity demands a seat at the table. We have earned it in blood and fire. This is Admiral Tanaka, signing off. She cut the transmission with a gesture. Set course for Earth, she ordered quietly. We're going home. The Prometheus Times turned away from the wounded world below. its reality-fold drive engaged, bending space around the ship. In seconds, it vanished from the Vextori system, leaving behind only smoke and silence and a lesson that would never be forgotten. On 1,000 worlds across the galaxy, beings watched the recorded message with shock and fear. The elder species gathered in emergency councils. Minor powers scrambled to reassess their relationships with humanity. The Galactic Concord convened for the first time in millennia. Everything had changed. A species they had dismissed as primitive had built impossible weapons. A civilization they had abandoned had struck back with devastating force. A people they had treated as prey had proven themselves to be predators. And in the quiet of their chambers, the rulers of 100 worlds asked themselves the same question. If humanity could do this when they were weak, what would they be capable of when they were strong? The answer terrified them, as it should. The message spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within hours of Admiral Tanaka's broadcast, every major civilization had received recordings of the battle above Vextar Prime. They watched the impossible destruction of the Vextori fleet. They saw weapons that defied known physics tear through ships like they were made of paper. They witnessed a single vessel do what no one had thought possible. The elder species reacted first, as they always did when something threatened the order they had maintained for millions of years. In the great hall of the Galactic Concord, 12 ambassadors gathered around an ancient table carved from a single piece of crystal. This table had stood for 50,000 years. Every major decision affecting galactic civilization had been made here. Now it hosted the most urgent meeting in 8,000 years. Ambassador Voraxis of the Vorath Collective sat at the head of the table. His species had been part of the Concord since its founding. They were masters of biology and genetics, their empire spanning 3,000 worlds. He had lived for 1,500 years and had seen civilizations rise and fall. He had never seen anything like this. The readings are confirmed, he said, his mandibles clicking with agitation. The human weapon operates on principles we abandoned as too dangerous millions of years ago. They have created a stable singularity drive and weaponized stellar matter. Impossible, Ambassador Kasari replied. Her form flickered with agitated light patterns. The calculations show such technology would fail 99 times out of 100. The risks are unacceptable. And yet the humans succeeded, Voraxis countered. They were willing to accept risks we were not. They had nothing left to lose, because we gave them nothing left to lose, another voice intoned. All heads turned toward the far end of the table. The Axiom Collective's representative sat there, a tall figure in robes that seemed to shift and flow like living shadows. The Axiom were the oldest species in the Concord, a hive mind that had watched the birth and death of countless civilizations. When they spoke, everyone listened. We knew the Vexthari were raiding human space, the Axiom said. Their voice was like many voices speaking as one. We knew humans were dying by the millions. We received their pleas for help. We had the power to stop it with a single word. The humans are not members, Ambassador Kreth objected. His species, the Kreth Syndicate, were merchants and traders. They had profited greatly from Vexthari slave markets. We have no obligation to protect non-members. No legal obligation, the Axiom agreed. But morality is not the same as law. Justice is not the same as protocol. You suggest we were wrong to ignore them? Kasari asked. I state a fact. We watched a young species suffer for 30 years. We could have stopped their suffering at any time. We chose not to. Now we face the consequences of that choice. The chamber fell silent. No one wanted to admit guilt. No one wanted to acknowledge that they had contributed to this disaster. But the truth was undeniable. What do we do now? Voraxis asked. The humans have proven they can destroy entire fleets. Their technology makes them dangerous. Do we strike before they build more ships? You propose we attack them? Another ambassador asked incredulously. I propose we consider all options. Consider this option, the Axiom replied. The humans destroyed over 400 Vexthari warships in 11 minutes. Their single vessel absorbed a combined fleet attack, without significant damage. Their weapons can reach across distances we thought impossible. The Axiom stood, their robes flowing around them like smoke. If we attack humanity, we will lose. Not immediately, perhaps. We have vast fleets and ancient technology. We might destroy the Time's Prometheus asterisk. We might even damage their homeworld. But they have shown they can build impossible weapons. They have shown they are willing to take impossible risks. And they have shown they do not forget. They would come for us. Kesari whispered. Yes, perhaps not tomorrow. Perhaps not even in a century. But eventually, they would come. And when they did, they would bring weapons we cannot imagine. They would bring fury we cannot match. They would bring revenge for every world we destroyed. So we do nothing? Veraxis demanded. We simply accept that this primitive species can threaten us? They are not primitive, the axiom said. They were never primitive. We simply chose to see them that way because it was convenient, because it allowed us to ignore their suffering, because it made us feel superior. The representative walked slowly around the table, passing each ambassador in turn. I have watched 1,000 species rise from their homeworlds. I have seen them struggle and grow and sometimes fall. The humans are not unique in their suffering. They are not unique in their anger, but they are unique in one way. What way? Kreith asked. They were pushed to the edge of extinction and did not break. They were abandoned by the entire galaxy and did not surrender. They were told their dreams were impossible and achieved them anyway. The axiom stopped at the head of the table. The humans did not strike us. They struck only those who wronged them. The Vexthari were slavers and murderers. Their punishment, while terrible, was not unprovoked. This was not aggression. It was consequence. You suggest we view them as allies? Veraxis asked skeptically. I suggest we view them as equals. I suggest we learn from our mistake and treat them with the respect they have earned. I suggest we invite them to join the Concord not as supplicants but as partners, after what they did, because of what they did, and because of what they might do if we continue to treat them as enemies. The discussion continued for hours. Some ambassadors argued for isolation, hoping to contain humanity within their small corner of the galaxy. Others pushed for preemptive strikes, convinced that it was better to act now before humans became even stronger. Still others supported the axiom's position, seeing wisdom in making peace. In the end, the decision was made. The Galactic Concord would extend an invitation to humanity. They would offer full membership, with all the rights and privileges that entailed. They would acknowledge their failure to protect human colonies and express regret for the suffering they had allowed. It was not justice. Nothing could truly be justice after 30 years of slavery and death. But it was a beginning. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, other species were reaching their own conclusions. The Kreth Syndicate had maintained secret mining operations on the edges of human space. They had purchased human slaves from the Vexthari, using them in conditions too dangerous for their own workers. When news of the battle reached them, their leadership convened an emergency meeting. Release them, the Syndicate's chairman ordered immediately. Every human in our custody. Release them now. But the cost, a subordinate began. The cost is nothing compared to what will happen if the humans learn we kept their people. Did you see what they did to Vexthar Prime? Do you want them to do the same to us? Within 3 days, every human prisoner in Kreith space was freed and placed on transport ships heading for Earth. The Syndicate included formal apologies and significant financial compensation. They hoped it would be enough to avoid humanity's attention. The Yolani Merchants Guild took a different approach. They had never participated in the slave trade, but they had traded with those who did. They had profited indirectly from human suffering. Rather than waiting for punishment, the Yolani decided to seek friendship. They sent a diplomatic fleet to Earth, loaded with gifts and trade proposals. They offered technology, resources, and information. They positioned themselves as potential allies rather than former enemies. Other minor powers followed similar paths. The Zelkari hegemony closed their borders to any species that had participated in human slavery. The Morthani Collective sent engineers to help rebuild damaged human colonies. The Tessari Republic offered military training and tactical knowledge. Everyone could see which way the wind was blowing. Humanity had announced itself on the galactic stage in the most dramatic way possible. Those who positioned themselves as friends now might benefit greatly in the future. Those who made enemies of humans might not survive. On Vexthar Prime, the survivors struggled to comprehend what had happened to them. The bombardment had killed 800 million. It had destroyed their military, their government, and their capacity for war. The proud Vexthari Dominion, which had terrorized weaker species for centuries, was broken. Refugees streamed out of the destroyed cities, looking for food and shelter. The infrastructure that had supported their civilization was damaged but not gone. Power still flowed to most areas. Food production continued in the agricultural regions. Life went on. even in the shadow of disaster. But the psychological damage was worse than the physical. The Vexthari had always believed themselves to be predators. They had built their entire culture around the idea of strength and dominance. They had looked down on weaker species as prey, existing only to serve the strong. Now they had been prey themselves. A species they had dismissed as weak and primitive had come to their homeworld and demonstrated absolute superiority. Everything they believed about themselves, everything they based their society on, was proven wrong. In the burned ruins of the capital, a young Vexthari named Kexalia stood with her brood mother, looking at the crater where their nest had once been. They had survived only because they had been visiting relatives in a rural area when the attack came. Why? Kexalia asked. She was barely an adult, still learning about the world. Why did the humans do this? Her brood mother was silent for a long moment. She had lived for 200 years. She remembered the first raids on human space. She remembered the celebrations when slave ships returned full. Because we took their children, she finally said. Because we burned their homes. Because we made them suffer and laughed at their pain. But we are Vexthari, the strong rule. That is our way. Our way brought this upon us. The brood mother gestured at the devastation around them. Our way made us believe we could do anything without consequence. Our way was wrong. What do we do now? The brood mother looked up at the sky, where the stars still shone despite everything that had happened. We learn. We change. We become something better than what we were. And if we cannot, then humanity will return. And next time, they might not show mercy. It was a hard lesson, the hardest the Vexthari had ever learned. But in the ashes of their old civilization, some of them began to understand. They began to question the beliefs they had held for millions of years. They began to wonder if there was a better way to exist. Not all of them. Change would be slow, and many would resist it. But the seed was planted. The possibility of redemption existed. Back on Earth, humanity celebrated. The news of the battle had spread quickly across human space. People who had lived in fear for 3 decades suddenly found themselves free. The Vexthari raiders would never come again. Their children were safe. Their worlds were secure. In cities across the Sol Reach, crowds gathered to watch recordings of the battle. They cheered when Vexthari ships exploded. They cried when Admiral Tanaka delivered her message. They embraced strangers and danced in the streets. But not everyone celebrated. In the quiet corners of Earth, some people remembered the cost of victory. 800 million Vexthari dead. That number weighed heavily on certain hearts. The scales had been balanced, perhaps, but the blood stained both sides now. Admiral Tanaka returned to Earth 3 weeks after the battle. Her ship docked at Titan Station, the same place where it had been built. She walked down the gangway in silence, passing through crowds of cheering people without seeming to notice them. President Okonkwo met her at the reception. The old woman had aged visibly since the battle. Her face was lined with exhaustion and something that might have been grief. "Admiral," she said formally, "on behalf of the United Earth Council, I thank you for your service." "I did my duty," Tanaka replied. "You did more than that. You saved our species." Tanaka was quiet for a moment. "Did I? Or did I just make us into something we never wanted to be?" Okonkwo looked at her carefully. "You are troubled. I killed 800 million people. Even knowing what they did to us, even believing it was necessary, that weight does not lift easily." "No, I suppose it does not." They walked together through the station, leaving the crowds behind. When they were alone, Okonkwo spoke again. "When I sent you the order, I knew what would happen. I knew the cost we would pay, not just in Vexthari lives but in our own souls. I made the decision anyway because I believed it was necessary." "And now?" Tanaka asked. "Now I live with that decision, as you must live with the execution of it. We did what we had to do. That does not make it easy." "It should not make it easy." Tanaka nodded slowly. "The galaxy is sending diplomats. The Concord wants to meet with us. Other species are offering alliance. Yes, they are afraid of us now. They should be. Should they?" Okonkwo stopped and turned to face her. "Is that what you want humanity to become? A species that rules through fear? I want humanity to survive. I want our children to grow up without terror. I want no one to ever look at us as prey again. Those are worthy goals, but there are many paths to reach them. The path of fear leads to dark places." Tanaka considered this. She thought about the Vextari, who had built their entire civilization on fear and dominance. She thought about where that path had led them. "What do you suggest?" she asked. "I suggest we use this moment wisely. We have shown the galaxy our strength. Now we show them something else. We show them that strength can be used for more than destruction. We show them that humanity can protect the weak, instead of preying upon them. You want us to be heroes. I want us to be better than those who hurt us. I want us to build something worthy of all the blood we have spilled." Tanaka was silent for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. The Axiom Collective sent a message. They want to meet with human leadership. They say they have a proposal for reforming the Galactic Concord. What kind of proposal? They want to create new laws. Protections for young species. Consequences for those who prey on the weak. They say humanity's experience shows why such laws are necessary. Okonkwo smiled slightly. They want us to help them become better than they were. Yes. And what do you think of that? Tanaka looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Vextari were burying their dead. Other species were watching, waiting to see what humanity would do next. The future was uncertain, filled with possibilities both bright and dark. "I think," she said slowly, "that we did not build the times Prometheus times just to destroy. We built it because we had no other choice. We built it to survive. And now that we have survived, now we must decide what kind of survival we want. The kind built on fear, where everyone is afraid of us, or the kind built on respect, where we are strong enough to protect others as well as ourselves." Okonkwo placed a hand on her shoulder. "That is why you are more than just a warrior, Yuki. You understand that victory means nothing if we lose ourselves in the winning. I ordered the deaths of 800 million people. I'm not sure I have any self left to lose. Then we will help you find it again. You are not alone in this. None of us are alone anymore." They stood together in silence, looking out at the stars that had once seemed so full of promise. Those stars had brought humanity pain beyond measure, but they had also brought humanity strength it never knew it had. The future was unwritten. Humanity would have a voice in writing it, and perhaps, just perhaps, they could make it better than the past. Only time would tell. 1 year had passed since the fall of Vexthar. The galaxy had changed more in those 12 months than it had in the previous 10,000 years. Old alliances crumbled. New partnerships formed. Species that had never spoken to each other found common ground. And at the center of it all was humanity. Ambassador David Chen stood before the great hall of the Galactic Concord, looking up at the ancient crystal ceiling that had watched over 50 millennia of galactic history. He was 60 years old, a former diplomat who had spent decades pleading humanity's case to species that would not listen. He had been ignored, mocked, and dismissed more times than he could count. Today, they would listen. The hall was filled with representatives from every major species in the galaxy. The 12 elder races occupied their traditional seats at the great table. Behind them, observers from hundreds of minor powers watched from tiered galleries. Holographic projectors broadcast the proceedings to trillions of beings across thousands of worlds. Ambassador Voraxis of the Vorath Collective called the assembly to order. His mandibles clicked with the ritual words that had opened every Concord session since the beginning. The Galactic Concord recognizes a petition from the species known as humanity. Ambassador Chen, you may speak. Chen stepped forward to the speaking platform. A circle of light surrounded him, focusing every eye and sensor in the hall on his small figure. He was just a man, a single human among the representatives of civilizations that had existed for millions of years. But he spoke for a species that had proven itself in fire and blood. "Thank you, Ambassador Voraxis. Honored representatives of the Galactic Concord, I come before you today not to beg for membership. Humanity learned long ago that begging accomplishes nothing." A murmur ran through the hall. Such direct speech was unusual in Concord proceedings, where diplomacy normally demanded careful politeness. 1 year ago, a human warship traveled to the heart of the Vexthari Dominion. You all know what happened there. 400 warships destroyed, military installations on Vexthar Prime eliminated. The empire of slavers that had terrorized the weak for centuries was broken in a single day. Chen paused, letting those words sink in. Some of you were horrified by what we did. Some called us monsters. Some said we had proven ourselves no better than the Vexthari we destroyed. He looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of ambassadors who had condemned humanity in private messages and public statements. You were not wrong to be concerned. 800 million Vexthari died in our attack. That is a weight my species carries now. It will be a weight we carry forever. But I ask you to consider why we did what we did. For 30 years, the Vexthari raided human space. They killed 12 million of our people. They enslaved millions more. Our children were sold in markets across the galaxy. Our families were torn apart. Our colonies burned while we screamed for help. Chen's voice grew harder. And what did the Galactic Concord do? Nothing. What did the elder races do? Nothing. Some of you even profited from our suffering. You bought our people as slaves. You traded with those who captured us. You watched us bleed and counted your profits. Several ambassadors shifted uncomfortably. The truth was not pleasant to hear. So, do not lecture us about morality. Do not speak to us of proportional response. You had 30 years to show us civilization. You had 30 years to demonstrate the values you claim to uphold. You chose silence instead. Chen softened his voice. But I did not come here to condemn you. I came here to propose something different, something better. He activated a holographic display. It showed the Charter of the Galactic Concord, the founding document that had governed galactic civilization for 50,000 years. This charter establishes the rights and responsibilities of member species. It creates laws that members must follow. It provides mechanisms for resolving disputes. But it has one fatal flaw. He highlighted a section of the document. It applies only to members. Non-member species have no rights under this charter. They can be exploited, enslaved, or exterminated without consequence. As long as no conquered member is harmed, anything is permitted. Chen let the display fade. That is how the Vexthari were allowed to prey on us for 30 years. That is how countless other young species have been exploited throughout history. The Concord draws a circle around its members and ignores everyone outside. Humanity proposes a change. A new display appeared, showing a modified charter with additions highlighted in gold. We propose extending basic protections to all sentient species, regardless of membership status. We propose creating a rapid response force that can intervene when young species are threatened. We propose establishing tribunals that can hold aggressors accountable, even if their victims are not Concord members. The hall erupted in discussion. Ambassadors consulted with their delegations. Some expressed support. Others voiced concerns about sovereignty and interference. The noise grew until Voraxis had to call for order. Ambassador Chen, what you propose would fundamentally change the nature of the Concord. It would require members to expend resources protecting species that contribute nothing in return. Yes, Chen agreed. It would require you to do what is right simply because it is right. I understand that may be a novel concept. Voraxis's mandibles clicked with what might have been irritation or amusement. You speak boldly for a representative of a species that just achieved faster-than-light travel a century ago. I speak honestly. That is all humanity has ever done. We asked for help honestly. We were refused honestly. We built our response honestly. And now we offer a new future honestly. The Axiom Collective's representative rose to speak. Their voice echoed through the hall with ancient authority. The human speaks truth. We have maintained our comfortable order for too long. We have drawn our circles and ignored the suffering outside them. The fall of Vexthar is a consequence of our failure as much as their success. The Axiom turned to face the other elder races. I have watched civilizations rise and fall for longer than most of you can imagine. I have seen empires built on cruelty collapse under the weight of their sins. I have seen species we dismissed as primitive develop in ways we never expected. Humanity has shown us what happens when we fail our responsibilities. They were forced to become warriors because we would not be their protectors. They built weapons of terrible power because we left them no other choice. Now they offer us a chance to do better. They could have come here with demands and threats. They have the power to make such demands. Instead, they offer partnership. They offer to help us become what we should always have been. The Axiom sat down. I support humanity's proposal. The Concord must evolve, or it will eventually face the consequences of its failures. Better to change now, by choice, than to change later, by force. The debate continued for hours. Ambassador after ambassador spoke, some in support and some in opposition. The minor powers, watching from the galleries, added their voices. For the first time in millennia, the Concord was genuinely divided on a major issue, but slowly. The tide turned. The Kesari delegation announced their support after receiving reports of positive trade relationships with human merchants. The Kreth Syndicate, eager to demonstrate they had learned from their mistakes, endorsed the proposal enthusiastically. Even the traditionally conservative Vorath eventually agreed, acknowledging that the current system had proven inadequate. When the vote was finally called, the result was unanimous. The Galactic Concord would be reformed, new protections would be extended to all sentient species, a rapid response force would be created, tribunals would be established, and humanity would be granted full membership, not as a minor addition, but as a founding voice of the new order. Ambassador Varaxis made the announcement with ritual formality. Let the record show that on this day, the Galactic Concord welcomes humanity as a full member with all rights and privileges. Let the records also show that on this day, the Concord Charter has been amended to extend protection to all sentient life. A new era begins. The hall erupted in applause. Some of it was genuine enthusiasm, some was diplomatic politeness, some was simply relief that the crisis had been resolved without further conflict. Chen accepted the ceremonial badge of membership with quiet dignity. As the applause faded, he spoke one final time. Humanity is grateful for this honor. We know that we are young. We know that we are inexperienced. We know that we have much to learn from species who have sailed the stars for millions of years. But we have also learned something that many of you forgot long ago. We learned that those who have suffered remember the taste of injustice. We learned that strength without mercy creates only enemies. We learned that the universe does not care who is powerful, only who is right. We will be good members of this Concord. We will follow its laws and respect its institutions. But we will also hold it to the promises it has made today. If any species threatens the weak, if any power tries to prey upon the helpless, humanity will remember what was done to us, and we will act. He looked around the hall one final time, not out of vengeance. We have had our fill of vengeance, but out of duty, out of the conviction that no species should suffer what we suffered, out of the belief that the strong have an obligation to protect the weak. That is what humanity offers the galaxy. Not just our weapons or our technology, but our determination to build something better than what we found. Chen stepped down from the platform. The ceremony continued with traditional rituals and speeches, but everyone knew that the important work was done. The galaxy would never be the same. Far from the Great Hall, in the shipyards of Titan, construction continued. The Times Prometheus Times was no longer alone. Its sister ships were taking shape in the massive construction bays. The Times Atlas Asterisk, carrying the weight of human hopes. The Times Phoenix Asterisk, rising from the ashes of old suffering. The Times Guardian Asterisk, named for the role humanity had chosen for itself. Admiral Tanaka walked through the construction yards, watching engineers and technicians work on the growing fleet. She had retired from active command 6 months ago, but she still visited the shipyards regularly. These ships were her legacy, for better or worse. Captain Morrison, her former executive officer, walked beside her. He had been given command of the Times Phoenix Asterisk. His grief had not faded, but it had been joined by purpose. The Concord accepted our proposal, he said, reading from a datapad. Full membership and charter reforms. Ambassador Chen is being called a hero. He deserves it, Tanaka replied. He spent his whole career trying to get the galaxy to listen. Now they finally are. Because we made them listen. Yes, sometimes that's what it takes. They stopped in front of the Times Guardian's Times construction frame. The ship was only half complete, but its shape was already impressive, massive and powerful, bristling with weapons that could destroy fleets. Some people are worried, Morrison said carefully. They think we're building too many warships. They think we should focus on peaceful development now that we're members of the Concord. What do you think? Morrison was quiet for a moment. I think the galaxy respects strength. I think the Concord accepted us because they were afraid of what we could do. I think that fear keeps us safe. And I think fear is not enough. We need to show them something more. We need to prove that we are worth respecting, not just worth fearing. Tanaka nodded slowly. That's what the young people say too. The ones who grew up after the raids stopped. They want to build, not destroy. They want to explore, not conquer. They think we old warriors are stuck in the past. Are they wrong? No. They're exactly right. Tanaka smiled slightly, the first real smile she had allowed herself in a long time. Our generation fought so that their generation could dream, if they want a better future. That's what we fought for. So why keep building warships? Because dreams need protection. Because the universe is still dangerous. Because someone has to stand watch while others sleep. She placed her hand on the cold metal of the Times Guardian's Times hull. These ships are not just weapons. They are promises. Promises that humanity will never be prey again. Promises that we will protect those who cannot protect themselves. Promises that we will stand against anyone who threatens the innocent. Heavy promises. Yes, but humanity has broad shoulders now. We can carry the weight. They walked on through the shipyard, passing crews who nodded respectfully as they went. The sound of construction filled the air, the noise of a species building its future. On Earth, life continued. The colonies that had lived in fear for so long were thriving. New cities rose where old ones had been destroyed. Children played in streets that had once been haunted by the threat of Vexthari raids. Families who had been torn apart were slowly reuniting as freed slaves returned from across the galaxy. President Okonkwo had retired the previous year, her work finally done. Her successor was a young woman named Amara Diallo. Born in the last year of the Vexthari raids, she had grown up with stories of suffering, but she had come of age in an era of hope. Her first act as president had been to establish the Memorial of Names, a massive structure on the outskirts of the capital. It contained the names of every human who had died or been enslaved during the 30 years of raids. 12 million names, carved in stone that would last for millennia. People came from across human space to visit the memorial. They touched the names of lost family members. They left flowers and tokens of remembrance. They wept for what had been taken and gave thanks for what had been saved. At the center of the memorial stood a statue. It showed a human figure, neither man nor woman, standing with arms raised to the sky. The figure's face was turned upward, looking at the stars with an expression that combined grief and determination. The inscription at the base read simply, "We remember, we endure, we rise." On the anniversary of the fall of Vexthar, President Diallo addressed the human species from the steps of the memorial. Billions watched across all human worlds and many alien ones as well. 1 year ago, humanity delivered its answer to 30 years of suffering. We showed the galaxy that we would not be prey. We demonstrated power that made ancient civilizations tremble. We earned our place among the stars through fire and blood. Today, I ask you to consider what we do with that place. Do we become conquerors, using our power to dominate others as we were once dominated? Do we become isolationists, hiding behind our weapons and caring nothing for the universe beyond? Or do we become something new, something the galaxy has never seen? She gestured to the memorial behind her. Every name on these walls is a reminder of what happens when the strong prey upon the weak. Every name is a warning of what darkness can flourish when good people do nothing. We carry these names in our hearts not just to remember our own suffering, but to ensure no one else suffers the same. Humanity has been granted membership in the Galactic Concord. We have been given a voice in shaping the future of galactic civilization. With that voice, we will speak for those who cannot speak for themselves. With our strength, we will protect those who cannot protect themselves. This is our promise, not to forget our pain, but to transform it into purpose. Not to seek vengeance, but to seek justice. Not to inspire fear, but to inspire hope. We are humanity. We have endured horrors that would have broken other species. We have built miracles that should have been impossible. We have proven that we will never surrender, never submit, never stop fighting for our survival. Now we prove something more. We prove that survivors can become protectors. We prove that victims can become heroes. We prove that those who have known darkness can bring light to others. The stars are watching. History is recording. Future generations will judge us not by the weapons we built, but by how we used them. Let us give them something to be proud of. The speech ended. Across human space and beyond, people reflected on her words. Some were inspired, some were skeptical, some wondered if humanity could really change, or if the rage that had driven them to Vexthar Prime would eventually consume them. But in homes and schools, in ships and stations, in all the places where humans gathered, a new generation was growing up. They had inherited their parents' strength and their grandparents' determination. But they also carried something new. Hope, optimism, the belief that the future could be better than the past. They would be tested. The galaxy was full of dangers, And not all threats were as obvious as the Vextari. Old resentments would simmer, new enemies would emerge. The peace humanity had won would require constant vigilance to maintain. But for now, in this moment, there was cause for celebration. Humanity had survived. Humanity had risen. Humanity had taken its place among the stars. And heaven help anyone who threatened them again. In the shipyards of Titan, the construction of the fleet continued. Ships that would defend humanity and protect the innocent took shape under careful hands. In the great hall of the Galactic Concord, Ambassador Chen worked with other diplomats to build the new order they had promised. In the Memorial of Names, visitors touched the carved stones and remembered those who had paid the price for survival. And in the infinite darkness between the stars, the times Prometheus times flew on, carrying its crew toward whatever challenges awaited. Its weapons were silent now, but ready. Its crew was tired, but determined. Its mission had evolved from vengeance to protection, from striking back to standing guard. The universe was vast and ancient and largely indifferent to the struggles of those who lived in it. But humanity had learned to make its own meaning. They had learned that the strong could protect the weak. They had learned that survivors could become heroes. They had learned that even the smallest species could change the galaxy. They had learned, most importantly, that when you have nothing left to lose, you must fight to build something worth living for. And they would keep fighting, keep building, keep hoping, because that was what humans did. That was what humans had always done, and the stars themselves seemed to shine brighter for it.